None of my other classes was my technology working correctly. Super fun. Attendance. Got your attendance. I will forget. Alright, let me mark our attendance. You guys try on the spell work. This is very similar to the stuff that was on the skills check that we did yesterday. And it'll come up again here in just a second. Hang on just a second. Let me get our attendance in. I'm not actually supposed to write you guys stuff until 10 minutes in. Tap on that iPad for me. There it goes.
I hope so.
I mean, it's entirely probable. Just thinking about, you know, people.
I have two pictures. This may be.
Coming back, right?
Oh, yeah. And I'll find it from the little card. Little card too. All right. That's all. Not really.
Oh, okay.
I'll use it.
So we've got. What were you doing?
Don't break.
Just 100%. I'm like, I'm about to forget this anyway, so. It's just one of those days today. My brain is not working the brain today. Alrighty. So let's go through this. For this first one, how are we gonna write this thing? 50. Hang on, I'm just changing a couple of settings. You're not wrong, I'm just changing settings. Alright, so this is if I know hot dog. I know that they got a hot dog, so we know it's out of that 158 people who got a hot dog. They're somewhere in this row. And the probability they got a soda is 50 out of the 158. So we can read that as soda. If I know hot dog, soda given hot dog. However, how about this second one? No food, upside down U, no drink. No food and no drink. That's what this guy is and. It's 10. That's my no food, no drink. Out of everybody, 400. So the probability somebody got no food and no drink is 10 out of the 400. How about our last one? It just says pizza. Our 182 out of 400. Good. Excellent. All right. Then let's look at the bottom one. Suppose you are asked to list in order of preference the best 3 movies you've seen this year. If you've seen 10 movies during the year, in how many ways could your top 3 be arranged? So, first things first, is this a permutation or a combination?
Permutation.
Permutation, how do we know that?
Because the order matters in this one.
Order matters. They say in order. So we want first, second, third place. If it was combination, it would be make me a stack of your top 3 movies. It doesn't matter where they are. So if you're handing me 3 DVDs, it does not matter which one you hand me first. So since it says in order, that means we are using a permutation. So when I'm putting this in the notation, I'm going to write a big P like that. What number is going to be in front? 10. We are choosing from 10 movies. And what number is going to be in the back? 3, because we were picking 3 of them. We're going to put that through the calculator, and we're going to figure out how many different ways can my top 3 be arranged. 720. Boop. There we go. Questions on these? Because we have been living very, very heavily in the probability side of this chapter. But this chapter is not just called probability. It's called probability and statistics. So we're going to head more onto the statistics side today. So we're going to have a fair bit of writing and absolutely no calculators that we need to use. Okay? Because it's going to be all about words and situations. So our kind of intro for this is if we're talking about polls, and especially since it's an election year, you're going to hear a lot of the words we talk about over the next week, a lot, as we get closer and closer and closer to November. So a lot of times when they're doing campaigning, to find out how well candidates are doing, they're going to do surveys and create a poll. How these polls are conducted can actually give us different results depending on who's doing it, where they're doing it, and how good they are at doing it. So if a survey does not get a good sample, a good random sample, then we can get skewed data or misleading results. Their example here is if we're doing a survey and all we do is call landline telephones. Y'all have landline phones?
No.
I don't have a landline phone. The only person I know with a landline phone is my mother, who is old. So if they're only calling landline phones, it's going to be mostly old folks. Not saying only, but a lot of people who have landline phones are older. So opposite of that is if they only do a texting survey, it's going to skew a lot younger because a lot of old folks don't know how to do the texting surveys. Example, again, my mother. So just saying. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at is how we can get good data and how we can make sure we're reading good data. So, not that, this one. We're going to be on page 13. It says sampling and bias at the top, and then it's got spaces for us to write the definition of 4 words, 3 of which we are probably vaguely familiar with. Population, sample, parameters, probably something we've not heard before, and statistic. If we have questions, I'd prefer y'all ask me. And if we have chitty chatty that keeps happening, I will make a sequence chart. Just saying. Okay, so what we have here is we're going to start talking about population. And what a population is, it's a group we want to know information about. Usually, they're quite big. Americans, people who live in Indiana, students at Pike High School. Those are big groups of people. So our population is a large group about whom we would like information, or we want information. It is. It says about whom we want information. You can say who we want information about. I'm just trying to be all grammatically correct. Makes it feel awkward, but I'm trying to be right, trying to English a little. So it's a big group. Who we want to know about? Americans. People who live in Indiana. People who live in Colorado. Could be Canada, you know. Italians. Could be big groups. A lot of times our population is so big that it's not practical to actually ask every one of them. Especially if it's something like toothpaste or soda or what do you think of this new flavor of gum? They make a lot of claims in advertising, especially saying Americans think this is so much better. Especially things like toothpaste or new flavors. And I'm going, I've never been asked, so how can they know all Americans? What they've done is they've taken a sample. A sample is a small group, and I'm going to call it a subgroup. Subgroup of the population. That it's going to be easier to collect data from. So instead of me talking to every single American about what they think of my new flavor of Pringles, I can find some people from across the country, all over the place, and do small sample groups to get an opinion that I can maybe use that data in a different way. So I'm going to jump over parameter for a second because it makes more sense to talk about our statistic next. So our statistic is the data we collect from our sample. So our statistic is the result from the data collection of the sample. I can move this out of the way if I am in your way. I'm on wheels. So I just saw you like leaning around. I can always move out the way if you need me to move. So those tables that we've been looking at, those were the data from a sample that's been taken. So we've been looking at the statistics. Those are the numerical reports that we received. What we can use that for, we're going to take our statistic, and if it said 10 out of the 400 people got no food and no drink at that football game, I could take that statistic and extrapolate it out and say, all right, maybe 1 in 40 people on average don't buy food at the football game. So we use our statistic to make a guess about our population. That's called our parameter. It is an estimate about the population based on the statistic. So a lot of times this will happen, you'll hear it in things like toothpaste commercials is always the one that pops in mind. Yeah. So if you listen to toothpaste commercials, they usually say 9 out of 10 dentists agree that this toothpaste does whatever the heck they claim.
How come not one dentist always?
Because they polled dentists, and usually it'll be 99 out of 100 dentists liked it. Or they talked to 1,000 dentists, and maybe it was 990 dentists. But they can't round it up and say 100%. They cannot guarantee every dentist in the entire country is going to agree with them. So they're taking their 99 dentists out of 100 and putting it in a fraction and saying, okay, maybe it's 99% of dentists. Maybe it's 9 out of 10 dentists. And they're just making it an easier guess on that population than calling every single dentist in the country and say, what's your opinion on this gum here? Because that would take them forever, and about half the dentists would get real mad at them. There you go, dear. Okay, so that's the reason they always say 9 out of 10. It's not that they had one dentist that was like, no. It's that they asked 1,000 dentists, and 990 of them sent their survey back, and 10 didn't. And so they can't tell you their answers. And we have to make a guess based on the information that we collected. Or, maybe 3 dentists were like, no, I don't like that toothpaste. It's awful. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking through these and practicing identifying them. And we're also going to be trying to identify bias, which is kind of a big piece here. We're not actually writing the definition down. It's right below this. It's already pre-printed in your packet. Bias is just another way of saying unfair or prejudiced or misleading. So bias is either when we pick a bad sample or we ask a question that is misleading. So our example right here is if you want to know what Americans think about the current presidential candidates, what is the population we're looking for? Who is it we want to know about? Americans. I want to know what all Americans think. So we poll 50 Pike students. What is the sample we took? Who did we actually talk to? The Pike students. So this is our population, the Americans. And we asked 50 Pike students. This is called a biased sample because not everybody could be in our sample. 50 Pike students are all Midwestern, Indiana teenagers. There's no old folks. There's no folks from California. There's no people from Florida. There's no real young kids. It's all teenagers in Indiana. So it's not a representative sample. It is not a good sample because we're not getting a collection of all Americans. We're getting very narrowly Indiana teenagers. Okay? So that's what we're going to be looking at. We're trying to figure out if we have a good sample or if we don't have a good sample. So this one is not in your packet. We're going to talk it through, and then we'll do the ones in your packet. We've got here an example kind of situation. We've got a researcher is talking to every 20th person that's going into a football game. So they're down at Lucas Oil Stadium, and they're asking every 20th person if they think that the city should increase everyone's taxes to pay for a new stadium. So, what is the population they are supposed to be asking? Who should they be asking? Everybody in the city, because it's going to be their taxes that go up. So our population should be the city. Who did they actually ask? Who did they talk to? Yeah, every 20th person going in the football game. So people going to the football game. This was our sample. Is that a good sample of everyone in the city? Why? Say it a little bit louder so I can hear you. Say it a little louder so I can hear you. It's only every 20 people. They're doing that so the line doesn't get super long. Because if I stopped and asked every person walking into a football stadium, it would make the line back up real far, and people would start getting real mad. So it's okay that they're not asking every single person. But there is a problem here. Do people attending a football game probably think pretty highly of football? Yeah. So if they're attending a football game, might they want to have upgraded seats and upgraded restrooms and extra staff so that everything's got shorter lines and that we should upgrade the stadium? Yeah. So the people that are already at the football game probably are already invested in football. So it's a biased sample because they only asked people that were already interested in football. We want to make sure that the population we're looking for, the city, is where we're asking. So we should ask people throughout the city, not just people interested in football. Because maybe it's just the same 500 people that go to that football game every week. And it's not that everyone in the city needs to pay extra for those 500 people to have cleaner bathrooms. Okay? Not saying it's Colts, just saying people. Okay. So, now we're into the one in the packet, which I did make a slight change to it, but that's okay. So we've got Pike administrators want to know what Pike students think the mascot should be if we were to change it. They had the band teachers ask their students. So what is the population we're aiming for?
Black students.
Pike students. All Pike students. I did change the class from your packet says English, my packet says band. So I'm going to go with the band one and I'll tell you why I changed it at the end. Okay? So if it's the one on the screen, what is the sample that we took? Who did we actually talk to?
Band kids.
Band kids. So our sample is band kids. The statistic that we gathered, the actual data that we gathered, was their what? What is the actual data we collected if we ask the band kids?
Band kids.
The band kids' ideas, right? Their thoughts on the mascot. So the statistic that we gathered is like, it's not a number, it's just that the band kids' ideas. And we're hoping we could take that data and extrapolate it out to a parameter. We want to use that statistic to make a guess about Pike students' ideas. So all students' ideas. Would this be a good sample in which we could make that guess? Or is this a biased sample?
This is biased.
Why is this a biased sample?
They only ask one specific group of people.
Say we only have band kids, right? Does everybody take band? Do all you guys take band? I mean, some do, but not everybody does. So a good sample, everyone could be in it. So this is biased. Not everybody takes band. What is a class that everyone could take where we could pass this survey out instead? Does everyone take math? Even seniors? English. Everyone takes English all 4 years. You'll get freshmen, you'll get seniors. I mean, you'd have to do different classes. It would have to be like every English teacher or a few different English teachers. But everyone takes English classes. Not everyone takes math, not everyone takes science, not everyone takes social studies, all 4 years. Everybody has to take English. That's why, if you pay attention in English class, that's where, the class photos happen and device distribution happens, and when we have homecoming court or prom court or all those kind of things, that often happens in English class. Because that's the one time we can get to everybody, or at least a sample of everybody. Okay? So English would be a better choice. That would be why I changed it. It's easier to see sometimes a bias than it is to see a good one right off the bat. So that's why I changed it. So English is better, would be how I would change it. So we're going to try another one, the one below. Boop. So if I want to know what my students understood of systems of equations, and I hand out a survey to all my students that are present on a Friday, what is the population I want to know about? Just the population. What is the population? Who? My students. That's my population. That's who I want to know about. I want to know if my students, that's my population. What is the sample that I take? The people here on Friday. And I know my handwriting's trash right now. But it's people here Friday. So what is the statistic that we get? What's the actual data that we get?
People that Friday.
The people on Fridays,
Thoughts.
thoughts, and how much they understand systems of equations. How they understand. So it's their understanding. So I'm going to do it the lazy way. I'm going to say their understanding. There we go. Understanding is going down the side, but that's okay. Their understanding. And if it's a good data set, if this is a good statistic, I can use that to extrapolate backwards about all of my students. So if I have a good statistic, I can use that to find out all students' understanding. Is this a good sample, or is this biased? Think it's a good sample? Anybody disagree? What's up?
The kids that weren't there probably wouldn't understand.
The kids that weren't there might not understand. But does everyone have an equal opportunity to be here on Fridays? Should everyone be here on Fridays anyway? Well, then we're getting into a whole different debate. I was like, 4-day week could be fantastic. But everyone could be here on Fridays. Everyone should be here on Fridays. Not necessarily is it detrimental to my study if everyone is not here on Fridays. As long as it's not a, National Honor Society's having a meeting, so everyone who has straight A's is pulled out. Or they're having the course meeting, so that all seniors are pulled out. We don't have any information like that. So as we can see it right here, I think this is a pretty good sample. We're getting into the point, like part of this part of the chapter is it's debatable. So the why parts of these are really important. Because as long as you have a reason and you can back it up, you're probably right. There is room for wiggle room on this. Very rarely is it going to be super duper hardline answer of, yeah, no, this is 100% bad, or this is 100% perfect. Because perfection doesn't happen in statistics. Like, we're dealing with people. People are imperfect. So as far as I can tell, this is probably a pretty good way to do it. Pretty good. Which means it would be fair or unbiased. The only thing we could do to make it better would be to make sure everyone was here that day. Questions on these two? Because now we're going to think about it a slightly different way. I'm going to give you a goal population, and we're going to figure out where we would go to collect a sample. So it still has the blanks because, honestly, we copy and pasted. But we're not going to fill in the sample or the statistic. We're going to figure out our population, what we hope our parameter to be, and we're going to come up with some ideas on where we could go to collect that data. So Mr. Wally wants to know what Pike students think about school lunches. Not asking y'all's opinions about the school lunches, because usually I hear that come out of me. But if Mr. Wally wants to know what Pike students think about school lunches, what is the population we're aiming for? All Pike students. And if we take a good sample that gives us a statistic, we can extrapolate it to the parameter of their opinions, what they think about the lunches. So our parameter is what they think about lunch. And they being the Pike students. What are some ideas you have, like not wrong answers, ideas you may have on where we could go to ask people what they think about the lunch? Say it louder. Lunchroom. Where else could we go? A classroom? Which classroom? English? Any other ideas? There's not wrong answers here. Like literally not wrong answers. We're just going to talk about benefits and pros and cons to each of these.
Assembly.
An assembly? Any other ideas? In a hallway. Just random like in a hallway. Okay. Does anyone see any of these options that may have a bias to them? An assembly, why could that have a bias in it?
Because
Not everyone goes to assembly, but just I wandered around the hallways. Would that have impact on their opinions on lunch? So that one might be doable, but it would be really impractical to do an assembly about a survey. Like that would be a lot of rearranging. So it's doable, but not a super practical option. So not bad. But would take a lot of time. So I'm not mad at assembly. Honestly, that is the very first time I've ever gotten assembly on this question in like 5 years. I like it. It's not super practical, but it's not a bad sample.
I would have them just scan QR codes on a Google form.
Yeah, we could do a Google form. The problem with that is sometimes you get something that's called a volunteer bias because the people that'll scan that Google form like to be active and involved in things. But that's getting a little more AP stats than we're going to go right now. So a Google form is an option as well. How about lunchroom? Would that be a good sample or would that be a little bit of a biased sample? If we're in the lunchroom.
Which one though?
Point one. Which lunchroom?
Because
It's like we have more than one.
they're two different types of lunchrooms.
Two different types of lunchrooms. Does everybody go to the lunchroom for lunch? No.
Not
So
at the
if
same
they're
time.
in the lunchroom, are they more likely to actually be eating the school lunch? Yeah, because a lot of the times the people that aren't eating school lunch will just stay in their classroom or they'll go to the library. So the lunchroom is honestly probably the least good of the options we have up here. Not that it's a bad option. It would absolutely work. But it's not the best because not everyone goes to the lunchroom for lunch. So not everyone eats in the lunchroom. The English classroom, we just talked about how English classrooms we use a lot of times for surveys. That is absolutely a decent one. If we don't want to interrupt English classes, a hallway is probably a good one too. We'd have to be careful about which hallway we picked because we wouldn't want to pick just M hallway over there where it's mostly upperclassmen and very rarely freshmen go over there. We wouldn't want to pick like W hallway, which is upstairs freshman center, because we're going to very rarely have upperclassmen over there. But we could do something like D, hallway. Goes all the way across. That would be a fine place. So we're not always looking for the right answer on these. We're looking for a good answer on these. Okay, we just have to be able to back it up. English classroom, everyone has access to. Hallways, everyone has access to. Lunchroom isn't bad. It's not perfect, but none of these are going to be perfect. We're dealing with people. Okay? We have one more piece I want to talk about because our sample is not the only thing that can be biased. We can have things called biased questions. There's another form of bias. So I want us to look through this. We've got a restaurant owner wants to think about what kind of meal she should add to her menu, and she asks her customers, do you prefer a plain salad or a delicious steak?
That's definitely biased.
Why?
Because why would you describe the steak as delicious? But the
Can you
salad-
tell what she wants you to answer? Yeah, it's biased. If you can tell what the question asker wants you to say, it's biased. Okay? So the one in your book is the one that's right below question number 4. So this will be our last one for today. This one's in your little notes. So the pavement production company surveys drivers about upcoming construction problems. And it says, do you agree with the experts that the freeway around the city needs to be widened? Is this a good question or is it biased?
Biased.
It's kind of biased. Because we can tell what they want us to say, right? If I said no, it's going to make me feel like I'm a little bit stupid, right? Like I am disagreeing with the experts. Like, gives me kind of icky feelings. How could we fix this question? Get rid of the with the experts. As I say, we don't even need to agree. Do you think the freeway around the city needs to be widened? That's a better question right there. All we need to do is get rid of the pieces that push you towards something. If you can tell which way the question asker wants you to answer, it is a biased question. Okay, so the way we'd fix it is we would just say, do you think that the freeway around the city needs to be widened? And then there's not a right answer. Yes, dear. Oh. Dude, you gotta knock harder.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to get you.
What's up?
On your homework,
Mhm.
74 is missing.
Love it. So much fun. Go ahead, skip it then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that.
Okay, so I'm going to pass out homework 5. Oh my gosh, I know, right? Holy cow. It's not due until Monday. Monday, okay? It is mostly about bias. There's a little bit about stuff we're going to talk about tomorrow, but it is mostly about the bias. Okay? And it calls it an experiment, but it's looking about bias. Is it a biased activity? Is it a biased survey? All about bias. The backside we're going to talk about tomorrow. I have not graded a single question on the skills checklist.